I don't pretend to know everything, and it is sometimes hard to understand what Daniel or Revelation truly tells us, but we can still eliminate false doctrines by reading it for ourselves and realize what narratives contradicts the Word of God. I will try and give some options, but God will reveal the truth to us all at His appointed time. The purpose of this series was always for you to read the Scripture and make up your own mind without trying to get a desired outcome to suit a specific doctrine. Looking at the Word with fresh, uncorrupted eyes like that of a child. We have covered Daniel 8, 9, 11 and 12, and we still haven't found this elusive Antichrist we constantly hear about. We found the first little horn, Antiochus Epiphanes. Hopefully we can identify the second little horn in the fourth beast, the Roman Empire. We'll also consider the man of lawlessness and the false prophet, or second beast in Revelation. Will we find the Antichrist? We are looking for one man that will run the world, stand in a future temple, and force everyone to take the mark of the beast. Or is it a fabricated lie to take our focus away from Jesus Christ? The problem is that we have quite a lot of potential suspects in history, and we haven't even looked at the book of Revelation yet. John mentioned two beasts in Revelation. He was also the only person in the Bible that mentioned an Antichrist, and he believed there to be many. John 3 verse 16. Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. Let's delve in and see what Scripture tells us. We are focusing on the fourth beast and covered the three first beasts in previous videos, so we'll skip through first part of chapter 7. Just a quick reminder of the fourth kingdom and last to have dominion. Here we see the statue. The Roman Empire, 2 legs of iron represented by an iron-toothed beast with 10 horns and a little horn. This will be followed by a kingdom of iron and clay. We will focus on the beast, and in next video we'll cover Daniel's timeline. It will be controversial and an eye-opener, but most importantly it must be biblical. Let's see what Daniel has to say about the fourth beast, and see what all the fuss is about. Here we also get a taste of what the beast represent. A kingdom ruling with dominion and is represented by 10 kings and a little horn. Let's face it, all the Roman Caesars saw themselves as gods and each had a role to play leading up to the destruction of Judea and Jerusalem in 70 AD. The empire would remain a pagan empire and even continued persecutions under the 12th king, the tyrant Domitian. This would continue to the last pagan emperor Julian the Apostate in 363 AD. This seems to be the breaking point. His last words were, "Thou hast conquered Galilean." Many believe Rome lived on through the Byzantine Empire, but that is unlikely as it was a Greek empire, and history seems very dodgy during the Dark Ages. In fact, it was not even called the Byzantine Empire during its existence. It literally just means, it's complicated. Rome through Pompey defeated Seleucid's empire, king of the north, and took over Jerusalem in 63 BC. Julius Caesar defeated the king in the south, Ptolemy Empire in 47 BC. This is the start of the fourth beast in reference to Judea and God's people. We don't have to discuss all the Caesars, just important points. Here is who was regarded as the 12 Caesars by first-century historians. This brings us to the first horn of the beast, Gaius Julius Caesar. He was regarded as the first Caesar and also known for changing times and dates. The Julian calendar. He was seen as a god and a descendant of Venus and Mars. Julius Caesar was elected Pontifex Maximus in 63 BC, the high priest. The official deification of Julius Caesar in Rome took place in 42 BC. Julius Caesar appointed Herod as the provincial governor of Galilee in 47 BC. He became known as Herod the Great. He was a Roman client king of the Herodian kingdom of Judea. Important to note that he was a descendant of Edomites that was forcefully converted to Judaism by Maccabean rule. Best known as the king that wanted to kill baby Jesus. The Herodian dynasty would continue till the destruction of the Herod's temple, or Third Temple in 70 AD, which Herod himself started to build, and yes, you heard me correctly, it was the Third Temple. It is just simple maths, besides the fact that it took over 60 years to build. Sadly, it seems it was intended more as a boastful showing of Roman Empire wealth than an actual dedication to God. Its size and function could be compared to a first-century mall. It also included a massive 100-room palace for the king. Caesar's great-nephew and adopted heir Octavian, later known as Augustus, rose to sole power after defeating his opponents in the last civil war of the Roman Republic. And the era of the Roman Empire began. It will become important in later prophecies, but he served twice as long as any other Caesar for 41 years and a rather peaceful reign. He also changed his calendar month of August to 31 days. During this time the Prince of Peace was born, Jesus Christ our King. We know Caligula ordered a statue of himself, portrayed as a god, to be put up at temple at Jerusalem. He was stopped, and it almost caused a major revolt. We can talk about Nero for hours, but sure you know that he was evil incarnated. No wonder many believe he was the Antichrist. The only argument against him being the Antichrist is that he did not physically stand in the temple and that he died before the destruction of the temple. Neither argument is supported by scripture, but let's agree he was an evil man, that he was an Antichrist by definition and a prominent head of the beast. He was favorable towards Jews in the start, and even made the equivalent of a peace agreement with Jews to eliminate Christianity, as it was seen as the greatest threat to the empire. After the fire in Rome in 64 BC, the most horrific persecution of Christians took place for a period of around 3.5 years or 42 months. By this time, Nero started building temples and massive statues in Rome, showing himself to be a god. Judea was highly influenced by Roman lifestyle, especially pagan worship and sacrifices. The governor of Judea, Florus, looted the temple on behalf of Nero and arrested many Jewish leaders. These abominations caused a major revolt and started the 42 months Roman-Jewish War. In 68 AD, due to a revolt in Rome, Nero fell from grace and was seen as a possessed madman. Ironically, they wanted to crucify him. His death remains a mystery, but the narrative is that he committed suicide. The last Caesar involved in the destruction of Jerusalem, prince and not yet a king, was Titus, who had a relationship with the Herodian princess Bernice. He led the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD, which caused the final desolation. We can now look at Daniel's beast and the potential horns. I know many see these horns as kingdoms, and yes, they might have a dual fulfillment as 10 current kings, but also 10 kingdoms that would arise out of the Roman Empire after it collapses. The 10 toes of the statue. What they can't represent is 10 kingdoms over the ages, past and future, as we are dealing with the Roman Empire specifically. Unfortunately, it is the most held belief of future fulfillment doctrines today. Daniel calls them kings, and for now we will take him by his word. We will expand on future kingdoms at the end. Summarized version of Daniel's beast. I will hop around to fit verses together into sequence with explanations, but hopefully won't be too confusing. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured, and broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. The Roman Empire devoured the territory and kingdoms of the previous 3 beasts. We get confirmation of another little horn, distinguishing it from the little horn in 3rd kingdom. 3 kings will be plucked up in the presence of this little horn, which means that he could not have been a king yet. We have to skip a few verses for the explanation. Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. Thought it interesting that God warned Israel in the days of Moses. Leviticus 26. And I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heaven as iron, and your earth as brass. I will also send wild beasts among you, which shall rob you of your children, and destroy your cattle, and make you few in number, and your highways shall be desolate. We know that in the year of the 4 emperors, 3 Caesars were plucked up and had no real power or influence on the war in Judea that started 66 AD. The Roman Empire almost lost its power during the Civil War, which just happened to coincide with the Jewish revolt in Judea. You can say it suffered a major head wound. We can thus identify Galba, Otho and Vitellius as the three horns plucked up. Vespasian secured the empire and became the 10th Caesar. Last horn that also coincided with fall of Jerusalem. We continue. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up and before whom 3 fell, even of the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. We know this is the Roman Empire, so let no man tell you differently, as Daniel makes it clear. When the Roman Empire fell, the kingdoms broke into pieces. We have seen empires rise and fall, but never again with dominion over earth. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. We note an 11th king that arises after the 10. We can identify that Titus would become the 11th Caesar. Question you might ask is, how did he subdue 3 kings? After the death of Nero in 68 AD, General Vespasian sent Titus to set up the overthrow of these 3 Caesars. His father Vespasian wanted to be the next Caesar after Nero, but he was still in Judea during Roman-Jewish wars. Titus was sent to Rome to secure his father's position. This set in motion the assassination of Galba. Otho apparently stabbed himself, and Vitellius was killed when Vespasian returned to Rome. This period was known as the 4 Caesars in 1 year. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Normally referred to as a period of 3.5 years. If we define the saints as the believers in Christ, we can see that great tribulation for the saints started in Rome, July 64 AD, when 2/3 of Rome burned down. We all know about the atrocities. Burning Christians as lamps, crucifying them and throwing them to dogs to be torn apart. Nero was overthrown in the beginning of 68 AD. When we look at Judea, the Jewish high priest martyred James, brother of Jesus, in 63 AD, and further persecution of Christians continued till 66 AD. At this point we can conclude that Rome and the Roman Herodian client kings in Judea, together with the priesthood they themselves appointed, all worked together. They all had the same common enemy: Christians threatening their way of life and religion. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. We also have the 3.5 years Roman-Jewish war that ended with the siege of Titus, who would later become the 11th king. The little horn. What we learn from the first little horn, Antiochus Epiphanes, is that he did not receive the power from himself, but rather alluded to evil forces giving him power. I believe Titus was in a similar position, as he did not want to destroy the temple, did not take credit for it either. Titus proclaimed that God destroyed the temple. Would just mention that it is very hard to find information on Titus, as a lot of history about his life is obscured. But Little Horn tells us that he was a vile ruler, but not a great or long ruling king. We must also not forget that Titus became the prince of Rome 9 months before the siege of Jerusalem. He did enter the temple and looted its treasures. Even had an arch built in his honor. His later reign as emperor was less than 2 years, but remembered by 2 major disasters: the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD and a fire in Rome in 80 AD. Coincidentally, Nero had the fire in 64 AD and numerous Mount Vesuvius earthquakes. Sounds very fire and brimstone. All we know about Titus is that he grew up at the imperial court in the company of Britannicus, and apparently sitting next to him when he was poisoned by Nero. Titus' first wife died 2 years into his marriage, and he divorced his second wife to please Nero. He was an official based in Rome during the persecution of Christians in 64 AD. And lastly, he had a love affair with Jewish princess Bernice before and after the fall of Jerusalem. We have now identified Titus as the plausible second little horn, but in no way or shape have we confirmed him as the Antichrist, even though I am sure he was not pro-Christ. The problem we have is that he actually assisted in doing God's work in destroying the temple, and the wrath was on the covenant breakers and not the Christian believers. How does he compare with Antiochus Epiphanes as a little horn? Both seem to have been under guidance of unseen forces. He made war on the saints, killed many Jews, entered and looted the temple, destroyed the temple and Jerusalem, took half of surviving population as slaves to Egypt. Would not surprise me if he was blasphemous. He was not a Caesar yet, but at least a prince. It seems Josephus the historian was working for Titus at this point, and a good friend who wrote quite favorably about him. We even have the north and south symbolism, as Vespasian came from Syria in the north while Titus came from Egypt with his troops. At least we can cover the many nations that surrounded Jerusalem. Daniel tells us how the beast and Roman Empire would end. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. The body of the beast would be the chief prince that had dominion over the kings of Rome. Nobody seems to be able to tell you when the Roman Empire fell, but the more important question is, when did the worldwide dominion end? Satan's dominion in heaven ended when God gave dominion to Jesus Christ on the cross. Michael defeated Satan, and he was cast down to earth. Jesus ascended to heaven and proclaimed King of Kings. Satan had but a short while for his rebellion. Judgment of the beast follows, and as a result, destruction of the body of the beast. We continue. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. We thus still have a season and a time. A 1,000-year reign and a little season when Satan will be released to deceive the nation for the war of Gog and Magog. Daniel is telling us that a judgment has taken place even before the beast was slain. The beast being the Roman Empire's dominion. This is where it mirrors the book of Revelation, and yet we are still incapable of comprehending that God judged the nation of Israel. Quite simply put, the nation of Israel in Judea had 490 years to atone for their sins. Jesus was sent to confirm a peace covenant which was rejected by some. These individuals went through God's wrath, and if we believe the word of God, many would have been saved. Not their lives but their souls. Jesus already warned believers in advance to flee Judea, and they were scattered around the world. Half of the wrath survivors were taken as slaves to work in the mines of Egypt. Now we can discuss the beast in Revelation and its correlation to Daniel's beast. At the end we will finally identify all the main characters as well as the mark of the beast and his number 666. I think many can agree that the beast of Revelation is the same beast, with some added information. We have the same 10 kings and kingdoms as Daniel, but the 3 kings plucked up is not included. Heads in prophecy will normally describe important kings, and the 3 plucked up Caesars had no influence or power in Judea, as Vespasian and Titus already started the war and was a rival faction to these 3 emperors. We obviously need Daniel to understand Revelation. Old Testament helps us to better understand the New Testament. This is done deliberately so that only believers would understand prophecy. They were very familiar with the book of Daniel as it was unsealed for the end times of Old Covenant Israel. We continue. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Here we see a reference to Daniel's first 3 beasts. The lion, bear, and leopard. Just in case we missed, we are now talking about the 4th beast of Daniel. It incorporated the lands and the people of the previous 3 kingdoms, and thus has all the attributes. Power given to it by the dragon, Satan. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. This is purely speculation and a fun fact on my part, as much of history seems to be sealed up or lost. Nero had a deadly accident at the 67 AD Olympics trying to race in a 10-horse chariot. He somehow survived and even won the race and every single competition he took part in. These even included acting and singing, which he added to the roster. The Olympics was delayed by a year as the date did not suit his busy schedule. The Olympics was a tournament to hail the gods. And the whole world wondered after Nero. He walked away with 7 gold medals. If it was not for Michael Phelps and many swimming disciplines, he would still be holding the world record for most medals held by an individual at the Games. Another more sober approach is that it was not a man with a head wound at all. We like dramatizing the Bible. A head rather represented a king. The Roman Empire almost fell after the Senate expelled Nero. A large civil war broke out and threatened the existence of the Roman Empire. After defeating the opposing three kings, the Roman Empire was again under control of Vespasian, and he brought back stability. We see the whole earth was under a rebellion, and it was a very dark time in history. Its head wound was healed, power restored to the beast, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. We are not just dealing with a man or a specific king as we are talking about the body of the beast. Satan has given the beast power. It was quite common in those days for Caesars to act like deities. But Nero took it a step further and built a 99-foot colossus of himself to be worshipped. He looted the temple through his governors in Judea. Titus himself saw it fitting to tear the temple down stone by stone and loot the temple of all its holy vessels and treasures. We continue. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Can we think of a time when Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Apollo was worshipped throughout the world? Roman emperors were worshipped as kings and saw themselves as the gods reincarnated. The whole Roman Empire gave authority to these kings, and sadly the Judean royal family and priesthood too. It reminds me of the trial of Jesus. John 9 verse 15. But they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, We have no king but Caesar. Before we tackle the second beast, let's first consider what John told us about the third beast in Revelation 19. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. We know the harlot was the unbelieving covenant breakers that fornicated with foreign gods. The woman is always Israel and was divided in two, the covenant-breaking harlot and the new covenant bride. The country with 7 hills was the common nickname given to Rome. The kings, judges and priests of Judea fornicated with the Roman Empire and their gods. Idolatry was a big problem in Israel even from their time in Egypt, and captivity in Babylon did not help either. Jerusalem was referenced as Mystery Babylon, and even Sodom and Egypt. Jesus might have put it more plainly. You belong to your father the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. We continue. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. The body of the beast did not arise out of the sea or nations, but rather the bottomless pit. We know him as the god Apollo and many other names like Zeus, Mars, or even Baal, the horseman of chaos. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Let's compare this beast to the one in Daniel. The first 5 has fallen, and we know that the first 5 Caesars were already deceased. We see Nero as the 6th, and is currently ruling in John's time, and I might be one of the few people that believe Vespasian then becomes the 7th king or head. But we already know 3 were plucked up. He only has to continue for a short space, from July 69 AD to when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Here it gets tricky, so bear with me. We recognize Titus was the one who through wrath of a god destroyed the temple and Jerusalem. He was not a king as yet, His father became the 7th Caesar, but he was, again, as he became the 8th Caesar. Titus came from the 7, as he was the son of Vespasian. This seems to fit quite nicely with Daniel's 11th king. After desolating Jerusalem and returning with his Judean princess, he was rewarded with the Arch of Titus. Not even Titus wanted to take credit for the destruction. He said their God destroyed them. In fact, he wanted to preserve Jerusalem as a trophy. One of the richest cities with the temple recognized as a wonder of the world. Revelation 9. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion, when he strike the man. Here we see that Apollo was released from bottomless pit, and I believe that he was manifested in Titus. 5 months is quite a random number and corresponds to the siege of Jerusalem. We know that most killing actually occurred between the factions inside the walls, not to mention cannibalism and blood flowing down the streets. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Passover lamb was fulfilled through Jesus Christ, and sadly in 70 AD the Jews that came from far to observe this holiday were trapped in Jerusalem, and did not realize that if they accepted Jesus, the blood of the lamb, that would make death pass over them as it did in Egypt. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. This is a hint to our timeline. John's beast, besides the 7 heads, had 10 horns just like the 10 horns of Daniel. The kings refer to the Nebuchadnezzar statue dream. The 10 toes or kingdoms that would arise after the fall of the beast or Roman Empire. These kingdoms were still part of Roman Empire in 70 AD, so they did not receive their crowns yet. Titus and his troops came from Egypt, and Vespasian from Syria with legions from all nations. They made war with the harlot, and made her desolate. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords, and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, and chosen, and faithful. Always good to get confirmation that Jesus is King of kings. A spiritual battle started at the crucifixion, and Christians would still be persecuted for another 300 years. 1,200 years later we again saw mass persecutions, this time from the Holy Roman Empire. So who or what is the beast with 10 horns? I believe we can now clearly see that the beast formed the sea is the same as Daniel's 4th beast. In the second part of Revelation we see that Satan the dragon is the voice behind the beast, and the final king is represented by Apollo as the spiritual being, while Titus is the literal fulfillment, and the 11th and 8th king respectively. The 10 horns in Daniel has dual fulfillment as 10 future kingdoms that will arise from Roman Empire during Iron and Clay Kingdom. These kingdoms will also be part of the final battle, and they will make war on the saints. As far as we know, this final battle has not taken place, and we base that on the fact that we are still here, and white throne judgment has not taken place. Who do the 10 kingdoms of Rome represent? We have Europe, Middle East and Africa represented. Pretty much the whole world if we look at migrations. Seems Far East might be the only countries not included. Guess China is off the hook. Any empires since the fall of Rome? We can list Byzantine, Ottoman, Russian, British, Portuguese, French, Spanish, Dutch, Italian, German, and currently the United States of America. Let's have a look at the second beast or false prophet. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. We clearly see that the little horn on the first beast and the lamb with 2 horns are not the same power. You can't throw Antichrist around as if it is an all-compassing boogeyman with all the attributes. First beast came out of the sea, symbolic of Gentile nations, identified as Roman Empire. The second beast is from the land, symbolic of Judea. The only powers in Judea are the kings and priests. This makes sense as the second beast is also referred to as false prophets. Seems as if the false prophets will be Jewish religious leaders that will deny that Jesus rose from the dead while deceiving people to align with the Roman Empire. Jesus described them as, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee." The royal family has always been the intermediary between Rome and the priesthood. The royal family and some priests were from Edomite descent and were not regarded as Israelites. We will also have to consider Paul's man of sin. Was he referring to the little horn or the false prophet? "And he doeth great wonders, so that he mocketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live." We forget that in the first century there were many sorcerers. Simon Magus comes to mind. We are also reminded of Elijah that made fire come down to defeat the Baal priests. We see a statue that was made for Vespasian. Could be Zeus, Apollo, or Jupiter. Jerusalem at this point had many pagan temples, bathhouses, and was quite Hellenistic with their lifestyles. Yes, the false prophet makes an image of the beast and tells people to worship it. This was quite common in the first century, and all Caesars expected people to worship their image. What it does not say is that the image was put in the temple. Here people mix up the story of Antiochus Epiphanes, a different little horn in a different kingdom. We should not add to scripture or make assumptions. "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." In the last 1,700 years we have not seen anyone being killed for not worshipping a pagan statue. Unfortunately, we saw this with Nebuchadnezzar, Xerxes, Antiochus Epiphanes, Nero, and even still in 363 AD with Julian the Apostate seems highly improbable today, and sometimes we let our imagination run wild. What was the mark of the beast? "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." Here is wisdom. "Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. What troublesome verses for most. Let's be honest, nowhere in history has anybody that has been persecuted allowed to trade freely. Quite common to ostracize people with different views. Are we waiting for Elon Musk to give you an AI chip in your brain, or on your hand? No, people, this is fear-mongering. In life you have but two choices. You are for God or against God. The mark is about your allegiance. Here we can see what God could have meant. Exodus 13. "And it shall be for a token upon thine hand, and for frontlets between thine eyes, for by strength of hand the Lord brought us forth out of Egypt." What did Jesus say about his first fruits? Saying, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel." Here are two more examples. "And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." I probably don't have to remind you that our temples are located on our foreheads. Our thought and our actions are sealed when we live for God. In the same way you will be sealed for Satan if we deny God. Acts 7 verse 43. "Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." In conclusion, taking the number or mark of the beast is the equivalent of pledging allegiance to an idol or pagan god. Number of the beast. Here is where people get excited. The number 666 seems to be a mystery, and a subject of much speculation. Nero seems to be the go-to as his name is 666 in gematria. Somehow, I just don't see John using gematria. A Bible reference would make much more sense. It would also be a reference only believers would understand. John already told us who the kings are but did not mention who the second beast from the land is. The lamb with 2 horns was in charge in Judea and would oversee laws and worship. Do you think John left us a clue? We will find out. I might not have overwhelming wisdom, but the people across the world in the first century knew someone who was highly regarded for his wisdom, and he was associated with the number 666 in the Bible. You guessed it. King Solomon. And before you get excited, I am not suggesting he is the Antichrist, but maybe he will give us understanding. God gave 3 specific commands that the king of Israel should follow. He shall not multiply horses for himself. He shall not multiply wives for himself. Nor shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. Solomon failed that command, but we are interested in one. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. 666. Solomon had all the wisdom in the world, but he got obsessed with earthly riches instead of wealth. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We are told he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. I believe John was pointing us to the current King Herod Agrippa too. It might even have relevance to this day. King Solomon is regarded as an earthly god by the occult. You will find that the ungodly believes that if you turn away from God, you can have an abundance of riches, wives, estates and servants on earth. And of course, you have the wisdom which they have inverted to knowledge or being illuminated. All through worshipping idols. In Jewish mysticism found in the Kabbalah and the Babylonian Talmud you will find stories about Solomon, and it describes how King Solomon actually accrued his riches through controlling spirits, and even used them to build the temple. This was achieved through a ring apparently given to him by an angel. The ring is referred to as the Seal of Solomon. The 6-pointed star is commonly used both as a talisman and for conjuring spirits and spiritual forces in diverse forms of occult magic. The Seal of Solomon represents 666. It has 6 triangles, 6 points, and the center has 6 sides. The hexagon is also widely used in the occult. Solomon built pagan temples for his wives and sadly got seduced by their gods. It is important to note that the name, Star of David, never existed, but rather that it is the Seal of Solomon, also known as the Star of Remphan, associated with Saturn or just plain old Satan, Moloch or Baal. When people tell you that they are going to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, you should really ask which god they are dedicating it to, as I doubt it is for the one true God. Just to be clear, it is not my understanding of Solomon, but how the occult perceived him. It is all about denying God in heaven and becoming godlike on earth. This is the old serpent's greatest lie. John was maybe telling us that the second beast from the land, or at least a horn, was the Judean king. People might not be aware, but Herod Agrippa II was not even Jewish. Funny enough, he grew up with Titus, and together they were educated at the court of the Emperor Claudius. It explains why Titus had a love affair with his sister Bernice. She and Agrippa were the ones who jailed Paul and tried to kill him. Agrippa also killed James, the brother of John. And their uncle Herod Antipas decapitated John the Baptist. Quite the family. Incest, murder, and intrigue. The Herodian family fits a possible horn of the beast from the land of Judea. They had the power to not only select the priests but had control of the palaces and the temple. Agrippa expended large sums in beautifying Jerusalem. They escaped before the war escalated in 66 AD. Worthwhile mentioning that the Israelites had another problem, and that was that Caesar Nero took away their silver half shekels for the temple, which meant that they had to use a coin that had Nero on the one side and the god Apollo on the other side. What made it worse is that their temple taxes were taken to be used to build the new Apollo temple in Rome, later known as the Jewish tax. The false prophet, and possibly the man of sin mentioned by Paul. We have considered that man of sin could not be a Gentile, as he would not fall under the law. 2 Thessalonians 2. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, either by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that, when I was yet with you, I told you these things? And now ye know what withholdeth that he might be revealed in his time. Firstly, Paul confirmed the man of sin was already at work, so it was a man in his day. Not a far-off future prophecy, as the time was at hand. It seems to be referring to a high priest known to him. For obvious reasons he could not use his name in a letter. He was also talking about Herod's temple, which he knew would be destroyed in the not-so-distant future. Who sat in the temple of God in the first century? The high priest seems to be the obvious answer. When you take law in your own hands and persecute and kill God's disciples, you exalt yourself above God. The high priest had authority over the temple worship and often acted as representatives of the Jews in dealing with the Roman occupation government, alongside the king. They were in charge of the Jewish judges, the Sanhedrin, neglecting that they should have been representatives of God instead. A possible fit, but more of family working together than just one man. Ananias ben Ananias was the high priest in 63 AD who ordered the execution of James by stoning, the brother of Jesus and fellow Christians. This was a breach of Roman laws, but more importantly God's laws. He was truly lawless. Ananias was deposed by King Herod Agrippa II for these lawless acts, and for convening the Sanhedrin without the governor's permission outside the law. King Agrippa was the only one who could restrain him from killing Christians. It was not beneficial to his rule, and he did not want to revolt. All about keeping his power. When Agrippa left Jerusalem in 66 AD, he could no longer restrain the priests, and he was taken out of the way. Ananias was not only the son of famous high priest Annas but also the brother of 4 more high priests, and brother-in-law of Caiaphas. He was one of the main leaders of the Great Revolt of Judea, which erupted in 66 AD. Falling away can also be translated as a rebellion. There was no longer a king or government, and the rebels took over. He was appointed as one of the heads of the Judean provisional government together with Joseph ben Gurion. In 68 AD, when John of Giscala led the Zealots to believe that Ananias had contacted the Roman general Vespasian for assistance in retaking control of all Jerusalem, the Zealots, driven to desperation, asked the Edomites, Idumeans, for assistance in preventing the delivery of the city to the Romans. When the Edomites arrived, the Zealots opened the gates of Jerusalem to them, and the Edomites slaughtered them. What stood in the way of a war between Rome and the Jews? The restrainer King Agrippa that tried to subdue the Jews and stop them from revolting. The rebels revolted against the king and attacked his palace. Gallus, who attacked Jerusalem in 66 AD, came to take the royal family away. Judea had no more king and no diplomatic way of resolving the conflict. The restrainer was taken away and all diplomatic ties were broken. Paul told Ananias directly that he violated the law. Paul looked straight at the Sanhedrin and said, "My brothers, I have fulfilled my duty to God in all good conscience to this day." At this the high priest Ananias ordered those standing near Paul to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, "God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit there to judge me according to the law, yet you yourself violate the law by commanding that I be struck." Jesus also said he would kill the false prophet at his coming. 2 Thessalonians 2. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. I might just mention that I believe the coming and day of the Lord referred to here is the judgment of Judea that happened in 70 AD. Not the second coming as portrayed by many doctrines. Judgment happened at the end of the age, and we will discuss the timeline in the next video. This truly sounds like a lamb with 2 horns. Jesus told us about false prophets. Matthew 7 verse 15. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. We know who Jesus was talking about, and we can see similarity with the beast, the lamb with 2 horns. Revelation 3 verse 9. Behold, I give of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Hero Agrippa, one who died in 44 AD, exalted himself above God, and we know how that turned out. Acts 12 verse 21. And upon a set day Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne, and made an oration unto them. And the people gave a shout, saying, It is the voice of a God, and not of a man. And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms, and gave up the ghost. That was a lot to take in, and in summary I would say that we are not waiting for one man, but we must be mindful of governments and religious structures that can deceive us. Many false messiahs, many false prophets, and many antichrists. The three beasts were controlled by evil spirits, the frogs coming out of their mouths. The Caesars, especially Nero, the Sanhedrin, high priest, and Judean royal family were all antichrists, and many exalted themselves above God. Sorcerers and even the temple priests were false prophets. We are not searching for a man, instead we are putting our armor of God on to not be deceived. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Next, the timeline in Daniel and figuring out where we stand in prophecy. God bless.